This episode of the Power Ranking Show is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your championships, finals info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA and Stanley Cup finals. Bet Online is your sports intel headquarters this season as they have you covered for all of your insider sports wagering needs, from basketball to hockey to MLB, UFC, and boxing. It is the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games that are available to play right from your home. Get into the action today. Head to the website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Hey, nice job. Very professional read there. That was one of your better ones. You keep getting better every week. It's amazing. That is at Marcus_Mosher. This is the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. We got some collection calls on Twitter that we need to get a podcast up. We finally did that this week. Yep. And we did some pretty interesting things. We did something really cool yesterday that we're going to talk about if you didn't listen to that. A little bit of news first, Marcus. Saw the news on the NFL Network. I think it was Tom Pelissero was reporting that Dalvin Cook and the Vikings look like they are parting ways, which is really shocking to me, because he's still one of the best backs in the league. He's extremely explosive. Minnesota is not in a division where I think they're an underdog. I think they have as good a chance as Detroit or Green Bay or Chicago to win that division. And it's not like they're saving that much money. I think they're saving $9 million. In today's game with the cap where it is that really that big a savings? Maybe to lock up Justin Jefferson on an extension or whatever. What are your thoughts on this?
No, I mean, they're cutting him because I think they feel like his performance is dropping off, right? And they've got some big time decisions to make with Justin Jefferson coming up, with Kirk Cousins' contract after this year. And I feel like they like Alexander Mattison a lot. So, we knew this was coming. It's not surprising. It just kind of shows you the shelf life of these running backs is 26, 27 years old, and then you're done. Muted.
Yeah, I feel like muting. I do. I feel like muting myself. I feel like that this is more about the money and less about the performance, because I haven't seen a big drop off on Dalvin Cook's game. Now, if you want to get out a year early on a player, I can understand that. But I tell you what, and I got a note from a Marcus Mosher. He's a big listener on our. I love that. I know you've never done a little pop-up note before. That was really cool.
All right. Just give you little notes so I can make sure you're saying the right things. That's all. Because whenever Elliot doesn't know what he's talking about, I like to say, hey, Dalvin Cook played for the Vikings and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's real funny. Did you see a major drop-off in his game? I have not. I know he's had soft tissue injuries. I still think he's a really explosive player. And again, it's not like Minnesota's out of it. I don't love this. I don't love it. You don't care.
But I think the fact that all the other NFL teams basically said, hey, we're not trading for you in that contract probably tells you quite a bit. Like, maybe he's not dropping out, but I think the rest of the NFL teams are like, he's either going to this year, or we're just not going to pay that much for a running back no matter who you are.
Bingo. But that's a different conversation than this guy can't play anymore. It's what do we value that position at, and then his talent relative to that position. But speaking of talent, we were talking historical talent yesterday. Marcus did his top 8 defensive players of all time. We're going to recap that list real quick. If you didn't listen to yesterday's podcast, though, there was a lot more involved than just saying the names. But can you pop it up? We're actually experimenting with technology. This is Marcus's Tecmo list. It's genius. This is one of your. When you do real, actual work, you do a really good job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Although the Ravens looks a little wonky, it's not your fault.
Well, let's be fair. Ravens in Tecmo Bowl in 1993. So,
is that worth a lot of money? Is that one of those? What do you call them again? Those things that are worth like millions of dollars that are just digital replications of. I always want to call it Bitcoin. What is it? When you can get a digital picture of somebody.
Yeah, I like it. Why am I spacing out right? Well, we sound so old, right?
Yeah, we do. Well, either way, Marcus's top 8. He had Ed Reed at number 8. If you're not watching and you're listening to us right now, Deion Sanders number 7. Rod Woodson at number 6. Bob Lilly surprised me a little bit. He had him that high at number 5, but I love it. Ronnie Lott, former safety and corner for the 49ers, was number 4. Aaron Donald, another surprise for me. Not that Marcus had him at number 3, but that Marcus didn't have him at number 2, because we've talked about this before. Now, I think Marcus got it right. I think Aaron Donald does belong at 3, Reggie White at 2, Lawrence Taylor at 1. 1, 2, 3 or so, to me, easy to do. 4 is where it starts to get a little tricky, but I don't think a lot of people would argue with Ronnie Lott at 4. What was your toughest cut yesterday?
I think it was leaving JJ Watt off the list. We had a long conversation about JJ Watt versus Ed Reed. Ultimately, I decided to go with Ed Reed at 8 just because and you made the case. It's so hard for a defensive, back, especially a safety, to have that big of an impact on the game, and Ed Reed certainly did.
Well, we're going to rectify some of that, and we might get to JJ Watt. Let's roll the team helmets out there. Of course, this is going to be pretty obvious when we see the team helmets about who made it, because there is a Texans helmet on there, and I can promise you that is
I almost put a Houston Oiler, the Tech Bubble Houston Oiler one on there, but I think that might have confused some people.
What if I really got you with like a Whitney Merciless or Jonathan Joseph or hey, Vince Wilfork
Ryans
had a cup of coffee with the Texans, didn't he? Like for 1 year,
Yeah.
I think so. Okay, so we're not going to go in descending order because we've already seen the top 8. So we're just going to go straight to number 9. You got a Rams helmet up there, and for me, this is Deacon Jones.
Yep.
And a really cool thing happened in the last year and a half or so. If you're an NFL historian, or if you love just stats, or if you're one of these people that likes to jump on Pro Football Reference like Marcus does, I think you're aware of this, Marcus, but they had historians go back and watch the film and put actual sack data from pre-1982 in for all the defensive linemen. That wasn't available in 2021. That hasn't been available for years. And they did that, I think, partially to disprove that Coy Bacon has the actual sack record for a single season at 26. He still had like over 20. But they actually went back and made sure, watching NFL films, that these sacks were official. So Deacon Jones's sack numbers that have been rewatched and re-recorded from 1964 to 1968. So we're talking about 5 years, 14 game seasons. The guy had 100.5 sacks in 5 years. You think?
He also had one of the most unstoppable pass rush moves that we've ever seen, which is just awesome. It's just, he's just going to hit you in the head as hard as he can, and that's how he's going to get around you. It's brilliant.
Yeah, the head slap was decimating, as the best way to put it. By the way, I want you to know that in 69, he had a down year. He only had 15 sacks. So he didn't keep up his 20 sack. I mean, that is remarkable. I mean, I don't know why my voice just went up 2 pitches, but you play 5 years, okay, or a 5-year stretch. You're playing 14 games a season. So that's 70 games. 70 games, and you have 100.5 sacks. That's ridiculous.
It's quite a few.
Yeah. I will say it was a little easier to get sacks then, in one respect, or 2 respects. One, a lot more 7-step drops, Marcus. They weren't doing the short passing game stuff. And then linemen had, and the linemen had to keep their arms in. Okay. The downside of trying to get sacks in is you weren't going, I mean, teams like now, wouldn't you say it's normal for a team to have over 600 dropbacks in a season?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Back then, you're talking about maybe 350 dropbacks a season. Huge difference. So it kind of evens out in the end, is my whole point. Anyway, I got Deacon Jones. Any thought on that at number 9?
If I was going to add a player from the 60s or the 70s onto my top 8, Deacon Jones was going to be the guy. It was really hard to leave him off, so I'm glad that we got him on pretty early. I got a feeling I know who number 10 is, because I was also debating on putting this player here inside of my top 8.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, Marcus is in total Steeler country where he lives, and Mean Joe Green he's a living legend where you're from, pretty much. Mean Joe Green was the principal piece. Mean Joe Green was to the Steelers defense as Marshall Faulk was to the Greatest Show on Turf, the queen on the chessboard, the guy that makes it all go, the guy that attracts the double team, sometimes triple teams, totally dominant player. He was a first-team All-Pro multiple times. In 1975, I think he sustained kind of a neck injury, and he wasn't quite as effective player from like 76 on, but he was still as good as any defensive tackle in the game. He just wasn't Aaron Donald anymore.
And
I
when
want to
you're
ask
part
you
of
something.
4 Super Bowl runs or
Yeah.
4, I mean, and you're the best player on that defense,
On
not
that
bad.
team. On
Yeah.
that team.
On the team. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Franco Harris was great. Lynn Swann was great. Terry Bradshaw was great. John Stallworth was great. Mike Webster. But Mean Joe Green was the best player on the Steelers. Here's what I wanted to ask you. He went number 1, 1969, right? So you're going a little bit far back here, but that's the combined AFL NFL draft.
Mhm.
It was the third one. He went to North Texas State.
Not North Texas.
Yeah, it wasn't University of North Texas back then. It was North Texas State. What are the chances that a University of North Texas player is going to be going number 1 in any of our next 5 drafts?
Never.
Never.
And we're lucky if we get a single North Texas player drafted, right?
Yes. It's crazy to me because even back then, North Texas State was really small. So it was just as crazy back then that he went number 1.
So you wondered, like, how did teams get film on him?
You know what? It's a great question. You know the North Texas Mean Green, and his nickname is Mean Joe Green.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, back then, a lot of people were reading Street and Smiths, and if Street and Smiths covered you, it's sad to say, but our scouting still was not. It was starting to become higher tech in 1969, but it wasn't there yet. So the key was really, who was your publicity director at the college? Who was your stats information person? I think North Texas State must have had a real winner there because Mean Joe Green got a lot of pub. Let's go to number 11. I don't know if you know who this is.
Is this
I used the Lions graphic.
Night Train Lane?
It is. Good guess, my friend. Good guess. 65 career interceptions. If you're part of that camp, it's like, how can you compare old players to new players? 65 interceptions in any era is going to stick out. And these aren't 65 interceptions. And this is what I want to ask you about, Marcus. It's one thing to have 65 interceptions. Boy, even that just sounds ridiculous to say. It's one thing to have 45 interceptions if you played corner and safety in your career. Because safety, like Charles Woodson, towards the end of his career, didn't he lead the league in interceptions one year with the Raiders? Yep. I'm pretty sure near the end of his career he did. Okay. Doing that as a corner, I don't know how that's possible because teams don't want to throw at you. And it also means that you're still playing corner in your late 30s.
It's pretty unbelievable, right? He's kind of the gold standard for cornerbacks in terms of taking the ball away. I mean, 14 interceptions is still the record for most interceptions in a season. We had Trayvon Diggs have 11. Was it? Yeah, 11 in 2021. Still 3 away from breaking the record, and that was in a 17-game season. I just don't know with how efficient passing games are now, even though teams are throwing the ball more than ever, if we'll ever see anybody break that record.
Yeah, Night Train had 14 interceptions as a rookie in 1952. They went after him. He played for the Rams then he went to the Cardinals, and his longest tenure, his best tenure was with the Lions, where he played with a couple other Hall of Famers. The other corner on the other side of Dick Nine Train Lane with the Lions was Dick LeBeau. And they had a safety named Yale Larry. He's also in the Hall of Fame. One other thing here about Night Train. Night Train was an enforcer tackling. I mean, they outlawed his tackle. He clotheslined guys. So this was a guy that he had a couple pick sixes as a rookie. This is a guy that picked the ball off, and this is a guy that would absolutely hit you. He played, I believe, 15 years in the league, 14, 15 years. And again, 65 interceptions. He's way up at the top of the list. We'll get more to the interception list in a second. Let's go to number 12. I think this one's pretty obvious. It's a guy that we talked about yesterday. J.J. Watt, as dominant of peak as any guy on this list, period. And then a really nice career resurgence with the Cardinals, a la Kurt Warner, kind of a mid-career lull, and came back and had some nice seasons in a really effective 2022 season.
There was a 5-year stretch where he had 68.5 sacks.
Yeah.
And he was in that 5-year stretch. He had 3 defensive players of the year, 5 all-pro selections, and like 50 pass deflections, and one more, 192 quarterback hits. in that 5-year stretch.
That's just ridiculous.
I
Couple
think if
touchdown
you
catches, yeah.
I think if you take, like, let's say a 4-year peak of any defensive player of all time, and you stack that up with JJ Watt, Watt might be in the top 3. Like, his peak, I think, was higher than just about any other defensive player ever.
Yeah, something you talked about yesterday was the deflections at the line, right? So Too Tall Jones was always kind of the unofficial leader in pass deflections at the line, but Too Tall was 6'9", and so people always just attributed that to his height. But everyone would say that knew the game. No, it's really about timing. It's about reading when knowing the quarterback you're playing. Does he pat the ball twice before he throws the 15-yard out? Does he, turn his shoulder? It's timing, and then it's disengaging with the lineman to get your hands up. JJ Watt's not 6'9".
No.
He wasn't the tallest defensive lineman in the game. He just knew, I'm not going to get there on this play, and I'm going to disengage. I'm going to get my hands up. It's a really great play. It's a clutch play. It's a stat that's kind of buried. It's one of those buried in the box score kind of thing. So I love that. Now I want to talk to you about something not near and dear to your heart, which is off the ball linebackers at number 13, because Marcus, we haven't had an off the ball backer yet on our list. And
No.
Dick Butkus, I put him here, and I have a couple questions for you on this. Really short career compared to these other guys. He only played 9 years in the league. Half of them were injury filled, but at his peak, he was considered the scariest defensive player in the league. And the responsibility of the linebacker in the 60s was different than the responsibility of the linebacker today. So how much does that matter to a guy like you that this was the best guy at his position in the era that he played? And then the second part of my question to you is, you asked me earlier today if I tend to underrate the highlight reel guys like the Randy Mosses, the Barry Sanders, and I do. Dick Butkus was the highlight reel guy on defense. His hits are, if you've ever seen NFL films of Dick Butkus, man, it's crazy.
It feels like the conversation for best off the ball linebacker ever is probably between Dick Butkus and Ray Lewis. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, they're part of a small group of about
Who would be the other
5,
name that you would put in there?
Well, I would put a really underrated guy named Joe Schmidt that played for the Lions. I would strongly I don't want to give away somebody else that's on my list.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
To me, it's Dick Butkus and Ray Lewis. I would have went Butkus as well. Especially, I do think it matters when you are like considered the best player in franchise history a little bit, right? And like your presence is like the whole team takes on your attitude, right?
Yes.
And that city and the culture, they all just embrace you. And I think that's what Dick Butkus did for Chicago.
So I guess what I was asking you is, do you think that a short crescendo can be mitigated by the fact that you're kind of the gold standard?
Because I almost put JJ Watt inside of my top 8. So yes, absolutely.
Right. And then the thing that we talked about on the phone today, when Marcus was telling me, hey, I think you tend to underrate these highlight guys. We were talking, who are the 3 guys we mentioned? Randy Moss, Deion Sanders, and Barry Sanders, that I tend to underrate them a little bit. But your point was that, hey, don't they make the game better by being spectacular and jumping off the page, right? Do you think Dick Butkus is that kind of guy, even though he's an off the ball backer?
Yes, because I think his physicality is what drew so many to watch football, right? The hits that he had were bone chilling, and I think people really loved watching that.
Yeah, it was a different era, and it was hard to leave him off this list, so I did. Okay, number 14. Well, it's another off the ball backer, but I want to be really careful when I say off the ball backer. I don't just mean middle linebackers. So I didn't want to say this name, but it's Jack Ham, and Jack Ham of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'll never forget this. Dan Rooney, when NFL Network did like a top 10 list of Pittsburgh Steelers, and I remember somebody talking to Dan Rooney about it, and about, the greatest Steelers of all time. And Dan Rooney said, why doesn't anyone ever mention Jack Ham's name as maybe the best Steeler? And it's a great point. Jack Ham had 53 career takeaways as a linebacker.
Yeah.
That's a ton. That's the most ever, by the way, by any linebacker. Jack Ham, though, was a weak side linebacker, and his responsibility was to cover the back, to manhandle the tight end and then cover him. to hit receivers going across the middle if it was before the 5-yard bump rule. That was Jack Ham's job, not to go get 10 sacks. And that's also the job of an off the ball backer. And so what I'd say to you, Marcus, is of all these guys that are on this list, I'd put him as the kind of guy that could play in today's game, because even though he was smallish, we've seen that kind of linebacker come down in size over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, the first guy that really stood out to me was Telvin Smith with Jacksonville when he was 218 pounds coming out of Florida State. If Telvin could do it, Jack Ham can. I will also say Jack Ham has one of the coolest pictures in NFL history, right? He's got him just smiling with no teeth. It's awesome.
Wait a minute. No. That's Jack Lambert. You got to get that. Yeah, doggone it. Although I think Jack Ham might have been missing some too.
He was well. That's true. I mixed it up. That's my fault. I was bidding on a Michael Vick autograph card on eBay. So,
well, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because Jack Lambert's another guy. Like, Pittsburgh's loaded, dude. They're loaded.
Yeah, I hate to admit that.
Another living legend in your area, Rocky Bleier. He wouldn't make this list, obviously, running back, but another living legend where Marcus is from. Okay, number 15. It's New York Giant. Now, this is going to be a guy that a lot of y'all have not heard of. It's M. Tunnel. Some people call him Emlyn Tunnell. I believe the proper pronunciation is Tunnel. This was a safety for the Giants in the 50s. Now, you want to talk about super underrated? There's a reason for it. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's got 79 career interceptions. 79. I looked at his first years in the league, Marcus. He had 6 interceptions every year for like the first almost 10 years in the league. 6 every single year. It's crazy. But the reason a lot of people haven't heard of him is he came out in the early 50s. There were hardly any. There were less than 20 black players in the league. And it was really hard for guys like him and Dick Night Train Lane to get their pub. You mentioned Night Train Lane having the 14 interceptions. Do you know he did not even make the Pro Bowl? Having 14 interceptions in 12
That's impossible.
Games. Exactly.
It must have been one of those Trayvon Diggs years where Pro Football Focus was criticizing the amount of yards he gave up. So I get it.
Yeah. Some cruddy racial attitudes of the early 50s contributed to this, and it's why you don't know M. Tunnel better. But I'll tell you this: he was a great kick returner, great punt returner. 79 interceptions. It's insane, and he played 12-game seasons almost his entire career. So that was an easy one for me. Okay, last guy on my list here. It's Merlin Olsen of the Los Angeles Rams. That's Olsen, Olsen. Some of you guys know him from Little House on the Prairie. I think that was he appeared on that show.
Yeah,
he sold flowers. Longtime flower pitchman. But this guy had 14 Pro Bowl appearances. He was a great player in the 60s. Deacon Jones talked about how he was so strong he could manhandle the guard and sometimes hit into the tackle so that Deacon Jones could go free off the edge and get to the quarterback. And the thing that I really like about Merlin Olsen and why I have him at number 16 and I put him over Von Miller is because Merlin Olsen was so good late in his career that in his 12th year, he won the Maxwell Club Award, the Burt Bell Award for the best player in the league. Actually, it was his 13th year, and he's a defensive tackle. I think Jalen Hurts won the award this past year.
He did.
Yep. It's a different award than the MVP. If you're a 13-year defensive tackle and you're winning that award, you must be pretty special. But Merlin Olsen, last point on him, he was part of the fearsome foursome defensive line. They all weighed 275 or heavier in the 60s. And someone asked him in the 90s, could you guys play today? He goes, of course we could have played today. We were all fast. And if we weighed 275 without ever lifting a weight, how big do you think we would be if we lifted?
Yeah.
And for Merlin Olsen, that was bragging because this was the most humble, gentle Giant ever. My question, though, to you is, do you feel like we have too many defensive linemen on our list? Because we've got Merlin Olsen, we got Deacon Jones, we got Mean Joe Green, Bob Lilly, Aaron Donald, Reggie White, J.J. Watt.
We only have one true safety in Ed Reed, right? We do have well, that's not true. We have 2. We have Ronnie Lott and Ed Reed, although Ronnie Lott played corner to start his career, much like Rod Woodson did. Yeah, I think it's fine. I like this list. I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't deserve to be in the top 16. My last question for you is, who is the one guy that you just hated leaving off this list?
Von Miller.
Yeah.
Because I always feel this pressure to have new guys on there. But then, and I understand that fans want to hear about new guys because they don't necessarily know all these names. But here's the thing. If you go new guys and you go the last 15 years, well, the NFL's been played for about 105.
Yeah.
So that's just 1/7 of league history.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that we have two current players on our list is actually pretty good. And the other thing is these guys make so much money now, they don't have to play late in their career. They also change teams, which means they change schemes. I think it's easier for a defensive player to have a great career, Marcus, if he's playing in the same defensive scheme with the same group of guys for his whole career.
I'm just surprised you didn't have Sauce Gardner on this list.
Stop. I knew you were going to give me a hard time about that.
No, I liked it though. This is a really good list. I think in combination with my top 8, I think this is more than fair.
Well, I asked you, I said, what Marcus is referring to is he was asking me, like, what current player do you think could most end up on a list like this? And I said Sauce Gardner, because I've never seen a corner come into the league and be the best corner in the league as a rookie.
Yeah.
And when I was doing research for this list that we just rolled out, Deacon Jones, Mean Joe Green, Night Train Lane, J.J. Watt, Dick Butkus, Jack Ham, M. Tunnell, and Merlin Olsen. I saw that Mike Haynes was really good as a rookie, but he wasn't the best corner in the league.
No.
Probably the last corner to be the best corner in the league as a rookie is number 11 on our list, Dick Night Train Lane, who had 14 picks. Yeah, so
good compliment.
But I think Von Miller really is the one guy. Von Miller to me is Travis Kelce of the defense. He's so clutch. Would you have had Von Miller on here?
No, I think I'm okay. I think if Von Miller can have like 2 or 3 more years where he gets combined 20 sacks and has a couple more playoff wins, then I think we really have that discussion about him being inside the top 16. But I'm okay leaving him out until he finishes his career.
My final thought on this is, somebody out there surely driving around going, dude, where's Derek Thomas? Where's Derek Thomas?
Where's Ray Lewis?
Thomas, yeah, well, we may have to do another one of these little lists. But Derek Thomas was scary good. There's no question. The difference to me between Von Miller and Derek Thomas is just that Von Miller in the postseason has been unstoppable. He's got 10.5 sacks in like 11 playoff games. Yeah. He was great in the Rams run that you've mentioned plenty of times on this very podcast. And then, of course, 2015, he was amazing. But any other guy that you'd really like to see, like, be number 17? Anyone besides Ray Lewis more current?
More current?
Or same era as
Ray Lewis. My love for DeMarcus Ware. I don't think he deserves to be inside the top 20, but that's the only guy that I'm like, you know what? That guy was absolutely awesome at his peak. He's the only one that I would include.
Tell you what, if we're talking 1 year or one game, I'll put Darrelle Revis with anybody.
Yeah, that's a good
one. I'll put him with anybody.
Another name, Troy Polamalu, I don't think was as good as Ed Reed, but he was certainly as impactful. I think in the next group of 8 players, at least he would be in conversation.
I think I'm going to have to do the next 8.
All right, there you go. I'm excited.
We'll have to put it together,
Force you into doing a little bit more work.
Yeah. You got anything else or we get out of here?
We're good. I really like the Lions helmets that we have on here. In the Rams.
I know.
I can't believe we have 3 Rams inside of our top 16. Almost 4 if you were going to conclude Von Miller.
You know what's crazy about that is, don't you think Rams are one of those teams that whenever you think Rams, you think offense?
Yeah.
I instantly think
Kurt
offense.
Warner, Marshall Faulk,
or Cooper Kupp, Hakeem. Yeah. So in the 1950 Rams, I think 38.9 points per game on offense. Yeah. Literally, there's so many great offensive Rams teams, and we have 3 Rams here. Yeah, so pretty cool. 3 Steelers as well. But that's it for us. If you want to catch up on some Cowboys history, take a listen to Locked On Cowboys. Marcus does that podcast with Landon McCool. He also does a really cool Fantasy Dynasty podcast as well. He also covers the Raiders for USA Today Raiders Wire. He is at Marcus_Mosher on Twitter. I'm at Harrison NFL on Twitter. And this podcast was sponsored by Bet Online. We appreciate everybody at Believe as well. Take care, everybody.